The capital city of New Avalon was bright and full of noise on the last day before the fall. The crowd in the wide streets moved fast, carrying food, water, and tools to the shelters below the great towers. The sky above them glowed in strange colors, blue and gold, mixing into red. The storm that came that day was like nothing the people had ever seen. Captain Nora Hale stood on the upper deck of the command tower looking toward the horizon. She had seen battle before, but never one like this. Her brown hair whipped in the hard wind as she gave orders through her headset. Inside the control room behind her, screens flashed warnings and urgent messages from all over the defense network. Nora's team worked without rest. Among them was Lieutenant Ryan Cole, a young engineer with sharp eyes and a little too much hope left in him. "Captain," he said, "the backup shields are still offline, but if we reroute from the east power grid, we might hold them for another hour." "Do it," Nora answered. "We only need 30 minutes. After that, the city must be ready to close the main vault doors." She looked down toward the palace where Queen Althea led the people to safety. Nora had spoken to her only once before, but she remembered her gentle voice and the way she smiled even when frightened. The two women could not have been more different, one born to lead by crown, the other by action, but both carried a heavy burden that day. The sky grew darker as thunder rolled in long, heavy waves. From the upper clouds came streaks of fire that cut across the light. Nora knew what that meant. The first wave of attacks had begun. On the ground, the streets shook. Glass towers bent like reeds. People hurried to the underground shelters, while alarms screamed in the distance. Nora steadied herself. All power to the shield cores. If they fail, the palace falls. And if the palace falls, everything we built goes with it. Ryan looked at her, worry on his face. "Captain, the control chamber is unstable. The energy output will be too high. You'll be caught in the shockwave." Someone shouted, "We can trigger it from here." But Nora knew the truth. The remote system had failed in the last strike. The manual switch was deep inside the reactor vault, needed to be set by hand, and whoever went in would never come out. "Set the system for manual launch," she said calmly. Ryan stepped forward. "Let me go. I don't have family here." "You have a future," Nora told him. "That's more important." She picked up her communicator and sent one last message to Queen Althea. Her voice was steady, though the air around her shook. "Your Majesty, the shield will hold. Save as many as you can. I'll handle the rest." There was silence, then a soft reply. "The kingdom owes you everything. May we meet again in a calmer world." Nora smiled, a small, tired smile. Then she turned and walked toward the lower tunnel leading to the reactor core. The floor trembled with every step and sparks fell from broken wires above. The door to the reactor glowed with warning lights. She placed her hand on the scanner one last time, entered her code, and the heavy gate opened with a hiss. Inside the chamber, the air shimmered with heat. Flames danced softly across the metal walls. In the center stood the control column, tall and silver, humming with bright energy. She reached it and began to type commands on the console. The countdown started 10 seconds. Outside, the city screamed as the main defense line collapsed. Ryan shouted her name through the radio, but static swallowed his voice. Nora took a slow breath. She looked through the observation window at the city far below, the towers glowing in the light of the storm. People were running, fighting to live. She thought of them, of all the faces she might never see again. She thought of the Queen standing brave among her people. Then she pressed the final button. The reactor roared as light flooded the chamber. A wave of power rushed through New Avalon, wrapping the city in a golden shield. The fire from the sky turned aside, broken by the strength of one woman's hand. When it ended, the command tower was gone. Reports later said Nora Hale had vanished with the last flash of light. There was no body, only silence, and the saved city. That night, Queen Althea stood on the palace balcony, the wind cold against her skin. Below her, thousands knelt in gratitude, whispering the name of the one who had given everything. She looked toward the dark sky and said softly, "You will not be forgotten, Nora Hale." High above, the stars flickered like tiny fires, and somewhere beyond them, unseen, a new story was beginning to rise. 5 years had passed since Captain Nora Hale vanished in that great flash of light. New Avalon had changed. The city that once burned now shone with calm silver towers and quiet streets. Children played in gardens that grew where broken glass once lay. People spoke of peace, but in their hearts, the story of Nora's sacrifice was still alive. Every year on the same day, bells rang from the palace, and Queen Althea stood before her people to speak of courage and hope. She never used the word hero. She simply called Nora the one who gave everything so we could stand here. The queen had grown stronger, but lonelier. Her crown felt heavier with each passing season. The councilmen praised her for keeping the city safe and guiding them through recovery, but when darkness fell and silence returned, she would walk the balcony alone, looking at the stars, listening for a voice that never came. On one quiet evening, as rain softly touched the tower walls, the queen met with her advisor, Ethan Ward, an older man with kind eyes and a steady voice. "The people believe peace will last forever," Ethan said, standing near the wide window. "But peace can fade if we forget how we earned it." "I could never forget," said Althea. "Not when I still see her face each time the shields flicker." Ethan said nothing for a moment. Then he handed her a small metal disc. "This was found by our scouts in the North Territory. It was buried in the ice. It carries her name." The queen's fingers shook as she looked at the disc. It was scratched and cold, but the engraving was clear. Asterisk Nora Hale, Command Captain, Defense Corps Asterisk. "Where exactly did they find it?" "Near an old signal station," Ethan replied. "It's strange that area should have been destroyed." "There's more, Your Majesty. They received a faint signal. Code matches Nora's identification key." The queen's breath caught. "That's not possible. She's been gone 5 years." "I know," he said quietly. "But the code is current. It was sent only yesterday." That night, the queen sat at her desk, the small disk beside her candle. She thought of Nora's last words. She remembered her voice in the radio, steady even as the world fell apart. It had sounded like hope itself. At dawn, she called for Ryan Cole, the engineer who once served under Nora. He still worked in the Defense Department, though the years had changed him. His hair was shorter, his eyes more tired. "You were the last person to speak to Nora Hale before the reactor was sealed," the queen said. "If there is even a chance she's alive, I need you to help find her." Ryan hesitated. "Your Majesty, if the signal is false, it could be a trap. That region is unstable and the weather unpredictable." "Then it is a risk I will take," Althea answered. "She saved us. Now we will search for her." Within days, a small team was ready. They used an old transport craft, once part of the rescue fleet. The engines groaned but still worked. As the ship rose into the morning sky, the queen watched from the tower. She whispered a silent promise to the wind. "If you are out there, Nora, I will bring you home." The journey north took 2 days. The land below was frozen and empty, miles of white stretching into forever. The signal grew stronger as they reached the far border. The ground radar showed shapes beneath the ice, metal structures long buried. Ryan looked at his monitor and frowned. "There's an underground vault here that shouldn't exist." The signal's coming from inside. The team cut through layers of ice and steel until they found a narrow entrance. The air was cold and stale as they stepped inside. It smelled of dust and machine oil. In the dark, they found broken machines, empty cryopods, and strange markings on the walls. Then the low sound of something still alive reached them, a steady beep. Ryan followed it to a chamber half collapsed by time. In the center was a single cryopod still glowing faint blue. Inside it, beneath the glass, was a face they all knew. It was Nora Hale. Her eyes were closed. Her skin was pale but peaceful, like someone sleeping deeply. Ryan felt his chest tighten. "She's here," he whispered. "Dear God, she's really here." The queen's voice came through the communicator. "Ryan, what have you found?" He swallowed hard. "We found her, Your Majesty. She's alive." There was silence on the other end. Then a voice that trembled for the first time in years. "Bring her home." The team worked quickly. They powered the pod and prepared it for transport. As the engine started for the return flight, Ryan looked out the window toward the stars. He remembered the day she disappeared, the day everything burned. Now she was coming back. Back to a city that worshipped her memory. Back to a queen who had never stopped waiting. The world was about to change again, and none of them could guess how. The air around the landing site trembled as the old transport ship touched down. A soft ring of dust rose from the ground, glowing faintly under the morning sun. The people who stood waiting could hardly breathe. 5 years had passed since the day Captain Nora Hale vanished, and now they watched in silence as the ramp lowered and cold mist rolled out from within. Ryan Cole stepped out first, his face pale and eyes wide with disbelief. Behind him, medical engineers pushed a cryopod down the ramp. Inside it, surrounded by soft blue light, lay Nora Hale. She had not aged a single day. She looked as she had that morning of the great disaster, calm and strong even in her sleep. The crowd whispered her name over and over, as if saying it too loudly might break the moment. "It's really her," someone said. "Nora Hale has come back." At the edge of the landing field, Queen Althea stood without moving. For a moment, she could not make her feet take a single step forward. She had imagined this scene so many times in dreams and memories, but facing it felt unreal. Her heart pounded hard in her chest as she walked closer, her guards keeping a respectful distance. The doctors opened the pod slowly. The bright steam drifted away, revealing a slight movement of Nora's hand. Her eyelids twitched, then opened. She blinked at the sudden light, her gaze unfocused. The first breath she took sounded like the start of a storm, shallow but filled with life. One of the nurses said quietly, "Captain Hale, you're safe. You're home." Nora's lips moved, her voice weak. "How long?" "5 years," Ryan answered softly, standing near her. "You've been gone 5 years?" Her eyes widened. She tried to sit up, then lay back as dizziness swept through her. The faces around her were younger, and yet the lines of time marked them. Ryan looked older. Althea looked both regal and fragile, as if time had carved her grace out of sorrow. Nora stared at the Queen, then gave a faint smile. "You're still here." Althea knelt beside her. "You saved us all." "Did you think I would leave before I saw you again?" Tears glimmered in Nora's eyes, though she tried to hide them. "I didn't think I'd ever wake up again, to be honest." They carried her to the Palace Medical Facility, where she was treated with care and silence. The people waited outside the gates for hours until, at last, Queen walked out and told them what they needed to hear. "Captain Nora Hale has returned. She lives." Across New Avalon, bells began to ring. Houses lit their windows in celebration. Workers stopped their machines, and children ran into the streets waving the flag of the city. For that one day, the world felt whole again. Later that night, the Queen visited Nora in her private room. The window was open to the cool sky, and the city lights shimmered in the distance.
Ow.
Nora sat up in bed, a simple blanket around her shoulders, and looked at the stars. "You don't look surprised to see me," Nora said with a soft laugh. "I never stopped waiting," Althea said. "Waiting is easier when you have faith." Nora shook her head. "Faith is for the brave, then." "I would have lost mine if I were in your place." They talked for hours. Nora told her fragments of what she remembered. The flash of the reactor, the heat, then cold darkness. She remembered drifting between noise and silence, voices that weren't real, a light that never faded. Then waking in the ice chamber, unable to move, dreaming over and over of the city she had saved, but never thought she'd see again. Althea listened without looking away. "You kept New Avalon alive, even while you slept," she said. "Your name gave my people strength when hope was running out." "But hope doesn't feed the hungry or rebuild towers," Nora replied gently. "You did that, not me." The Queen smiled faintly. "We both did, each in our own way." A quiet pause followed. Outside, fireworks burst above the city, spreading red and gold petals that shimmered across the windows. Nora's eyes softened as she watched. "I don't know what comes next," she said. "After all this time, I feel like a stranger in my own home." "Then we will help you find your place again," said Althea. "You once saved this city with your strength. Now, let it return the favor." Ryan entered briefly, bringing a report from the science team about the cryopod. "They say the system used a power source that doesn't match any we built," he said, puzzled. Nora frowned slightly. "Then someone fixed it after I fell unconscious." Althea met her eyes. "Someone knew you were meant to return." The night grew quiet again. From far below, the people sang songs that carried through the streets, songs about light and courage and a woman who had given everything. Nora closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound reach her heart. Then she opened them and looked at the queen. 5 years, she murmured. 5 years gone, and yet this still feels like home. Althea reached out and placed a gentle hand over hers. "Welcome home, Nora Hale," she said softly. The wind through the balcony curtains stirred like a living thing, and the city below glowed under the moon, alive once more because its lost guardian had finally come back. Days turned into weeks after Nora Hale's return. The city of New Avalon was full of joy and pride, yet beneath that joy, a quiet unease was growing. People wanted to know what really happened to her. They wanted to understand how a woman could vanish in fire and return 5 years later without aging a single day. The queen ordered calm, asking her people to give Nora time to heal, but rumors still spread through crowded markets and palace halls. Nora spent her mornings recovering, and her afternoons walking through the gardens she once protected. Everything looked familiar and strange at the same time. The children she remembered as infants now ran laughing among the fountains. The tall towers had been rebuilt with stronger steel, and the streets shone brighter than before. Yet she also noticed more guards, more whispers, more eyes watching her every move. One afternoon, Queen Althea joined her in the royal garden. The air smelled of jasmine and rain. The queen sat beside her on a stone bench, watching the ponds sparkle under the sun. "How are you adjusting, Captain Hale?" she asked kindly. Nora gave a half-smile. "It feels good, but also strange. People look at me like I'm something out of a legend. I don't know where I fit anymore." "Legends can be lonely," said Althea. "But even legends must live among people again." Before Nora could answer, Ryan Cole arrived holding a small folder. "Your Majesty, Captain, I need you both to see this." He placed the folder on the bench and opened it to reveal a photograph of a dark underground room, broken wires hanging like vines. "This is from the facility where we found you, Nora. We began clearing the site and discovered strange markings on the walls. We also found recent energy traces. Someone had been there only weeks before we arrived." Nora leaned forward. "Are you saying someone was taking care of the chamber?" Ryan nodded. "The cryo system wasn't meant to run for more than a few months. Something kept feeding it power, and the handwriting on the maintenance log it wasn't yours." Althea looked serious. "Who else could have known where you were?" Nora slowly shook her head. "Only High Command had access to the reactor coordinates. Does that mean someone inside the council knew I survived and chose to hide it?" The queen's eyes darkened. "Then we must find out who." That night, a secret meeting took place inside the lower palace chamber. Only the queen, Nora, Ryan, and Ethan Ward were present. Ethan, the old advisor, listened carefully as Nora explained every detail she remembered before the blast. He frowned deeply. "There were people in the upper circles who wanted the defense project buried forever," Ethan said quietly. "Maybe your survival endangered their plans," Ryan asked. "What kind of plans?" "Plans to build new weapons," Ethan replied. "Ones that use the reactor's same core technology. Dangerous things that could destroy half the city if controlled by the wrong hands." Nora's expression hardened. "So they let me stay frozen in that chamber instead of saving me." Silence filled the room. The queen finally spoke. "If that is true, then someone will answer for it." In the days after, Nora began her own quiet search. She met with engineers, soldiers, and old friends from the Defense Corps. Some spoke freely, others avoided her eyes. One night, a young mechanic handed her a small chip in secret. "I found this in the Corps archives," the boy whispered. "It carries messages from 5 years ago. Someone deleted them, but I restored a few." That night, Nora watched the recordings on a small datapad. She saw her own name listed beside orders marked confidential. And then, a familiar voice came through, a commander she once trusted, discussing the containment of Hale Project and ensuring subject remains undiscovered. Her hands trembled as she turned off the pad. The truth was worse than she expected. She had not been forgotten by accident. The next morning, she went to the queen. "I have proof," she said simply, placing the chip on her desk. "Someone close to the council did this. They wanted me gone so they could use my research for their own gain." Althea looked at the chip, then at Nora. "We will handle this carefully. We can't risk panic among the people. Help me uncover the network from inside. I trust no one else." Nora agreed. Together they began to plan in secret. Each night they studied old reports and coded messages, discovering small pieces of the puzzle. As the picture grew clearer, so did the danger. They were not only hunting corruption, they were being watched by those who feared what they might reveal. One evening, while walking the silent corridors of the palace, Nora stopped and looked back, sensing a shadow move behind her. But when she turned, the hallway was empty. That night she told the queen, "They know we're close." Althea's calm voice did not waver. "Then let them know something else too. We are not afraid." The moonlight poured through the tall windows as the two women stood together. The ruler and the soldier once again side by side. Around them, the city slept, unaware that beneath its peaceful glow, a storm was building once more, and the hands that once saved it were preparing to defend it again. Night settled over New Avalon with a sharp quiet that felt strange and heavy. The city lights glowed soft and silver, but inside the palace walls, tension moved like a shadow. Captain Nora Hale stood near the tall window of her room, staring out at the great towers below. Somewhere in those streets, people slept peacefully, never guessing that danger had returned. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the same peace she once fought so hard to protect. Inside the meeting chamber, Queen Althea studied the final reports. Every clue they had gathered pointed toward one name, Commander Lucas Bray, a man once loyal to the old Defense Corps, now the head of the Council of Security. He had overseen the new weapon program and buried the truth of Nora's survival. Nora entered quietly. Her strong steps echoed on the marble floor. "It's him," she said. "Check the old message logs. His sign kept appearing in every file. Lucas knew where I was, and he kept it hidden." Althea looked up, her face calm but cold. "Then we confront him. Tonight." Ryan Cole stood beside the Queen, uneasy but ready. "Your Majesty, he will deny everything." "He controls half the guard in the high sector," the Queen answered. "Then we show his men the truth before he can lie again." The plan was simple. Nora and Ryan would go to the upper command tower, bring the proof, and face the commander in front of his officers. The Queen would speak to the public from the Grand Hall, revealing the truth at the same time. It was a dangerous plan, but it left no room for escape. Before leaving, Nora turned to the Queen. "If this ends badly, you'll need to protect yourself." Althea shook her head. "I lost you once because I played it safe. I will not lose what is right because of fear." A faint smile touched Nora's lips. "Then we go forward." The lift carried them high above the sleeping city. The wind outside howled against the glass walls as the tower lights grew brighter. When the doors opened, Commander Lucas stood waiting with a small team of guards. His gray uniform was neat, his eyes cold and sharp. "Captain Hale," he greeted slowly. "You are a difficult ghost to bury. I should have known nothing stays quiet forever." Nora faced him with steady eyes. "Could have told them I was alive. He left me under the ice." He gave a short laugh. "You were a symbol of danger. The people loved you more than the system. Your death gave them hope. Your return would have ruined my control. I did what was needed to keep peace. Peace built on lies is not peace," she said simply. Ryan stepped forward and placed the data chip on the table between them. "This holds every message you sent to the secret research group." "It's over, Lucas." The guards around the commander hesitated, looking unsure. One of them whispered to another. Lucas saw doubt spread among his men and grew angry. He reached for his weapon, but Nora was faster. She pushed the table aside, grabbing the gun and throwing it to the floor. The shot never came. Instead, the loud crash echoed down the long hallway, alerting the whole tower. Within minutes, more guards poured in. Some carried the Queen's seal, loyal to her. Others followed Lucas. Confusion filled the room. Nora raised her hands. "See what your leader has done." Ryan connected the chip to the main command screen. The voice of Lucas filled the room, cold. In clear, describing the order to silence her survival and steal the reactor design, gasps spread through the soldiers. The truth was undeniable. Lucas tried to run, but the Queen herself entered with her escort, her voice strong and proud. There will be no more lies in New Avalon. The commander stopped, cornered. For a long moment, no one moved. Then he lowered his head. So you think you have saved them again? Wait until they learn how fragile your peace really is. He was taken away quietly, his words lost in the noise of justice being restored. When the hall cleared, Nora turned to Althea. You have your peace back, but it will never be the same. The Queen looked out through the glass toward the city below. Peace never stays still, grows, it changes, like people do. But it will live as long as someone is willing to fight for it. A soft wind blew through the broken door as dawn began to rise. The first light touched the clouds, painting them gold. The Queen walked beside Nora onto the high balcony. The streets far below shimmered as morning bells began to ring once again. People were waking to a new day, free from the lies that had poisoned their hearts for years. The Queen spoke aloud for everyone to hear. The one who vanished returned not only to save us again, but to remind us what courage looks like. Nora looked toward the horizon. I only did what anyone should. No one saves a city alone. We do it together. The sound of the bells grew louder, rolling across the towers. The people cheered Nora's name, their voices rising with the morning wind. For a moment, she closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. The same sun that had once seen her buried now saw her home again. She turned to Althea and smiled gently. It is good to finally stand in the light. And as the golden day rose over New Avalon, Nora Hale knew that her name, her story, and the promise of what she stood for would live far longer than the fear that once tried to silence her.